Your sensors are correct. Do not adjust your heading. You've discovered the Omega Particle, streaming to the Alpha Quadrant and beyond. Here's your host, the anchorman of the Federation, the Doctor of Dilithium. This is Jonathan Wiegand.
Welcome to the Omega Particle Podcast. Like the man said, I am your hostess with the mostest, with half my brain tied behind my back. Just to make it fair, I am Jonathan Wiegand, and today we are reviewing episode 10, the Vortex of season 1 of DS9. And funny story, Luna the intern, everybody. You know, I actually lost my voice on a roller coaster of that same name when I was a kid. And you may have lost your voice. I was like, yeah, I was so scared. We're going down the hill. I just lost my voice. And it took maybe like 45 minutes for it to come back. I was just happy I didn't pee myself. And if you know that roller coaster, I don't think it's around anymore in the Kings Island, Southern Ohio district. So shout out if you're around that region. But anyway, I want to start today off with a little piece of advice I've been doing lately. I've been really plugged into kind of the free Trek channels on the Pluto TV app. And this is by no way means a paid advertisement. I just thought, hey, it's free and they have dedicated channels to TNG, Voyager, DS9, and even all the movies. I'll be real, I'll probably cancel my Paramount Plus because it's like $12 a month. And I watch it, but I kind of like the raw dogging of Trek viewing, you know, just whatever episode comes on and I can flip in between the series. I'm like, this is really great, kind of a little bit more loosey-goosey as opposed to like the structured viewing I watch. And I just wanted to pass along because it is free. And hey, I mean, there's ads. It's kind of like normal TV, but it's free. So you can't really shake a stick at that. Also, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to wherever you're listening. Helps the podcast out, and we can always use the help in growing this little fun thing we do as a hobby. So I would definitely appreciate it. But let's get into this episode review of Vortex. And I have to say, Croden, he has some interesting parental tips. You have a daughter in stasis, she can't really talk back to you. And even Odo was having some trouble in this episode. Turns out being a shapeshifter is very tough, very difficult. You never really know if you're coming together or if you're falling apart. Oh my God, who wrote? Is that you, Luna? Did you write these? How are you on staff? Oh, that's right. We don't pay you. Anyway, all jokes aside, this is a very big bright spot in season 1. And it was even included in Geek.com's essential abbreviated watch list of DS9. So it does build some great foundations for Odo, and it has a lot of great twists and turns, which we will get into. But now that the bad jokes are over, let's get into the review of Vortex. Luna, let's roll. Let me get this straight. Odo, he went on a road trip with a fugitive, and now he's questioning his entire existence. And to me, that sounds like a regular Tuesday on Deep Space Nine. Now, if this is your first time listening to a review, we will always give you like a quick synopsis of the episode, and then thoughts, feelings of it. So fret not if you've never watched the episode, or it's been a couple years since you've watched it, because we're going to cover everything for you. And like I said a couple minutes ago, Vortex is one of those hidden gems from the first season where Odo, the resident shapeshifter, as we'll call him, and the moodiest security chief out there, gets a chance to explore his murky origins. And I mean, I think he's just as grouchy as ever when he's doing this. You think he'd be a little bit better mood, exploring where he came from, exploring his potential people, but no. The episode kicks off when a mysterious alien named Croden shows up, claiming he knows about a race of shapeshifters that are very similar to Odo. For Odo, who's been alone in his gelatinous pool of loneliness for several years and decades, this is like a breadcrumb leading him towards the answers he's been seeking about his own kind. And Croden here is just not dropping potential truth bombs about Odo's heritage. No, this guy is his own trouble, wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in an enigma. He's a fugitive who gets involved in a violent confrontation on the station, But his real talent is the smooth-talking communication. He knows exactly how to play Odo's emotional puzzle box, and he plays it like a freaking fiddle. Croden tells Odo about a mystical artifact that could lead him to other shapeshifters, which piques Odo's curiosity, of course, even though he would never admit it because he's the gruff security chief who doesn't care, and that's his whole vibe. So off Odo and Croden go on this little road trip through the Gamma Quadrant, which is a terrible idea, by the way. And just to kind of keep it in context, Croden is being returned to his home planet for crimes he did against the state. And that's all we know about. So it's like, okay, crimes against the state. Maybe he's a political refugee. Maybe he's running for his life, etc. And it turns out that this was a very risky decision because there's a race after him because he killed one of the twins. And as they venture into this vortex, because they're escaping this twin, or was a twin alien, Odo learns more about Croden's tragic backstory. And it's a very slippery backstory. Like I said, there's betrayal, a dead family, and a sense that Croden may not be this irredeemable criminal that he appears to be. And Odo has a dilemma, and he faces one. When they're down on this asteroid, he's torn between his duty to uphold the law and then his growing sympathy for Croden, who, at the end of the day, is just a guy trying to protect his daughter and what's left of his family, because whenever you speak out against the state on his home planet, they kill all of your family. And so was managed to sneak his daughter off, hide her in the stasis chamber on this asteroid, and that's the whole purpose of him going into the vortex, is get his daughter and hopefully get away. And this revelation gives Odo all the feels. Though being Odo, he definitely tries to keep it buried under his gruff exterior, and the episode builds to a classic Star Trek moral crossroads. Should Odo follow the rigid principles of the law, or embrace the more compassionate side that's been bubbling up to the surface for the first time we've ever seen? He ultimately helps Croden and his daughter escape, despite knowing Croden's not entirely trustworthy. It's a major step in Odo's character arc, revealing that beneath his stern exterior is a heart, or maybe a blob of gold. And he was proven right, because at the very end of the episode, Odo is knocked out, which we'll get into, and Croden could have left him and just took off and run, but he decides to go back and save Odo and bring him to safety because, that's the right thing to do, even though Odo is potentially at that point going to turn him over to his home state. Vortex is great simply because it gives Odo room to grow, expanding his character from a station-bound rule enforcer to someone who begins to question his own nature and the rules he's always lived by. Plus, the episode teases a lot of clues about this mysterious species, which will become key to the series as a whole in a few seasons. There's plenty of intrigue, moral complexity, and of course the signature growl that makes this a classic early DS9 episode that should almost be like required viewing. So before we get into the review, let's have a little bit of fun facts going down. And the first one is the Miradorn, which are the twin species in this episode. Their spacecraft was originally designed by a guy named Richard Dialgo, and the model that was used to film all the visual effects was sold at an auction for about $4,500. So with inflation, that's probably worth $30,000 today. Just kidding. So I think it'd be wild I don't even know where these auctions are at. If you do know, please respond to us on social media, Omega Particle Podcast on Instagram, or OPP Trek on Twitter, or X, should I say, because I would love to get some of these cool artifacts or I guess they're not artifacts, props, and just neat things that you could buy from shows. So if you know, please hit a brother up. I would appreciate it. Another first for this episode is that this is the first episode where Odo actually smiles. And it was actually a very big point to make because it's this rubber mask that Renee wears, and it's very difficult to show a smile. So it was a point of love to make it happen and make it look good. Like I mentioned before, Geek.com recommended that this was the essential watching for the abbreviated DS9 binge watching guide. And if you are a very big Star Trek fan, you will notice that when they're in the Vortex, you're like, man, a lot of these shots look super familiar. Well, you're not off, because they reuse shots of the nebula from Wrath of Khan, but they just recolored them slightly and then flipped them upside down. So if you were watching the episode and like, that looks off, or looks super familiar, that is why. And then speaking of Renee, he stated it developed the character wonderfully, and he was very happy with it. And that was from a magazine called Cinefantastic. Where do you get this research, Luna? Good gosh. Anyway, so getting on to my thoughts and feelings of the review. I've always thought this episode as being rather underrated, both for DS9 in general and for Odo in particular. It really is the only episode of the first two seasons that focus in a major way on Odo's longing to learn his origins. It hits all the right emotional notes and has a plot, and a pretty good plot too. And there's even a space chase and a battle for those of you who are into that kind of thing. And this is a great Odo-centric episode focusing on his origins. It really manages to get across to the viewers just how lonely the constable is and how he longs for some connection to the unknown past. Odo himself is a very tragic character. In these first couple seasons, he has no real place to call home. He tries to fit in, but it's painfully obvious that he doesn't belong. And even in an earlier episode, he indicated that he has chosen his bipedal form to help those around him be at ease, because he's really never managed to perfect the nose or the ears, and he doesn't want to be different, but he is. And we also get a chance to see, and this is probably the most important part of the episode, see more of Odo's sense of justice, and that when provided with all the details, he's not as cut and dry with the rules as he makes everyone believe he is. He actually has a heart in a sense, and wants only the best for those around him. Which is amazing, because now we know that this is one of the foundational episodes of his character, and we are going to see those dividends pay off in future seasons and for years to come. But going back to the episode, when Odo discovers Croden's situation, he could have easily returned the man to his people without any remorse and just said, that's the law, you broke it, too bad. After all, Croden is a wanted criminal and Odo is a constable. It's only when he realizes that there may be more to Croden's crimes than just being a quote-unquote enemy of the state that he understands Croden might not be as guilty as the people make him out to be. In this rare impulse, he allows the man and his daughter to go free, knowing that there's a chance that Croden would or could return to a life of crime. However, this also provides a chance to Croden to have a home with his family, something Odo desperately wants. In many ways, Odo gets a chance to live vicariously through Croden, even if it's just for a short moment. Of course, as we progress through the series, we eventually learn Odo's origins and who the shapeshifters are to the Gamma Quadrant, and it's not all what he expects. I won't spoil it here, but it is fascinating to watch his journey from the beginning again, knowing that he will learn and how he deals with the revelations to come, and then maybe he should be careful what he wished for. Now, I do have some faults with this episode, and it's more super nerdy issues, but it made me think, and it just kind of bothered me and took me out of the episode. First, in order to save Croden's life, Odo has to do something incredibly dumb. So he's running through the cavern, and it's all shaking from these torpedo hits, and Odo actually looks up, stops, and as the ceiling's coming down, oh, there's a rock, I should move. Oh, too late, and it's just not enough, and he's knocked unconscious by a rock bouncing off his head. And I was like, hey buddy, like, you're a shapeshifter, like, just go, like, just. And this kind of leads me to my next point, like, if he can turn and shapeshift so fast, why didn't he just like shapeshift into like a falcon or a bird and just get out of there? I don't know. But he stays humanoid, and they have to give Croden a chance to choose saving Odo over escaping. So I understand why they wanted to keep him humanoid. You just can't like grab a pile of goo or a bird out of the cavern. It's just not as much they had a limited budget, okay? Another issue, speaking of Odo morphing, is that He morphs into the form of a glass, and it's carried up to the holosuite on a tray by Rom. So number one, that has to be the fastest morph ever. I mean, Rom literally turns away for 2 seconds, and then boom, he's turned. Number two, and more than any other scene that we've seen, that's a thing to say 5 times fast, on more than a scene that we've seen anyway, but this one screams the question of where Odo's mask goes when he shapeshifts into a smaller object. Yes, I mean, I've heard everyone say about, and this is again talking super nerdy, about subspace pockets and Odo collapsing on himself, almost kind of that, I don't know, but I just wish there kind of would have been something to make canon so we know, because he goes incredibly small, incredibly fast. And then number three, this comm badge dilemma. Now, if you've been a big Trekkie on the forums, you'll hear about this, and that is the comm badge, something Odo fashions from his own substance. Can it be easier for him than a face? Or if it's a regular comm badge, what does he do with it? Does he put it inside himself and collapse it in himself? And if he can't do that because it's not part of himself, wouldn't the comm badge just be in the glass? Or does he take the comm badge off, if like throws it away? I don't know. It's only a show. It's just a TV show. But this is like, I feel like this is those nerdy questions you ask at a Comic-Con. In the episode of the Vortex and the comm badge dilemma. And so it's like, yeah, you're instantly set up to be laughed at. But this is things I think about in my free time, mowing the lawn, taking my son to school. You know, all the quandaries of mass and comm badges are just great. But putting them aside, the end scene when Odo decides to let Croden and his daughter go is definitely one of the more touching scenes in the first season. And that smile, like I mentioned before, the first smile of the season, and it was very difficult behind that rubber mask that Odo gives the girl, it was actually Renee's idea. And that kind of always gets me every time, because it's kind of wraps up the episode and it shows, hey, he does have a heart. And the closing line, as Odo gazes out of the runabout window and says, as he's looking at that shape-shifting stone Croden left him, home, where is it? Someday we'll know, cousin. And be careful what you wish for, buddy, because those people are terrible. Those people, I don't want to ruin it or spoil it for anybody, but I wish he got, well, I'm not going to say anymore. I don't want to spoil anything, but to wrap up this episode, I would say I'd give this episode a 4 out of 5, 5 being the absolute mark. It's incredible. It's awesome. 1 being I can't even watch it. So I give it a 4, probably the highest rated of the first 10 episodes so far of the season, because I was really impressed with it, and it definitely tugs on your heartstrings, and I like it so much because it lays an important cornerstone on the character of Odo, which is incredibly important in years forward. So that has been our review of Vortex, or Odo's worst vacation ever, as they like to call it. Thank you all so much for listening, and Luna, let's hit it. Well, I learned one thing. If you need to escape the law, just go into a vortex in the Gamma Quadrant. It's perfect for hiding fugitives, shapeshifters, and lets all your moral dilemmas be solved instantly. And pro tip, always check after you form into a briefcase, because last time Odo forgot and he ended up with 3 extra handles. Good God. Luna, what are these jokes? They're not even funny. I don't even know. Are you writing again? You should give it to Raul. He's better. Yeah, I know. Well, don't be threatened by Raul. He's got a gift. Anyway, okay, folks. That wraps up our Deep Space Nine episode on the Vortex. This episode gave us a lot to chew on. Odo's ongoing search for his origins, a shady fugitive with a surprising soft side, and of course, the eternal question, is it ever okay to bend the rules for the greater good? Vortex also showed us even our gruff, no-nonsense security chief has that heart of goo, as we've talked about. So definitely one of the better episodes of the first 2 seasons. And remember, everybody, as we're getting into the colder months and we get that seasonal depression, take care of yourselves and take care of one another. Everybody's valuable and definitely an important part of this world, an important part, especially of the OPP family. second star to the right, straight on till morning.